here, Jordan. I just want to hear your sort of take. They announced this week the largest cut in oil production in history by 10
Yeah.
billion barrels. It's mostly the petrostates, Russia, Saudi Arabia. I'm curious what you think in West Texas, what they're saying.
Well, it's mostly the petrostate, sure, but if you look at our production is down 600,000 barrels a day without any coordinated cut whatsoever, and it's only going to get worse. We're going to go from 13 million to about 8 million in about 3 months, probably. It's going
Wow.
to be a massive cut from America, and these other players who made that cut know that they have damaged our industries spectacularly. So this is them bearing down on us. They started this flood the market bullshit before coronavirus even took off, right?
Wow.
So this was something that they had going on, and they didn't do it because Saudi and Russia had a disagreement necessarily. They did it because what we are doing out here was screwing up their markets, and they couldn't get oil back to 100. So they wanted to push our guys out for good, and that was the original plan. Then coronavirus kicks off, drops demand by 30 million barrels a day. So they cut 10 million. And if I don't know, you guys probably don't follow the energy market as close as I do, but uh, it dropped. The price continued to drop when they cut 10 million barrels a day. This historic cut is it's kind of tongue in cheek because they weren't going to get close to meeting the 30 million barrel per day demand reduction that did occur. They cut 10 million. So now what? We have a 20 million per day surplus. It's like, okay, thanks a lot. So the rest of that will come from demand will slowly start coming back as things get better, and the rest of the cuts will come from American bankruptcies, American shut-in wells, and lack of drilling. And our rig count has gone from I think a high of 2,000, and now we're down to 200 and dropping or something crazy like that. Yeah, so they're definitely we're the ones bearing the brunt of the price collapse. The Russians and the Saudis, those guys don't care. They have their national oil companies, and they're going to be fine no matter what happens.
Right. And I have a suspicion that we might be taking an eyeball to Venezuela, but don't at me.
Yeah, I don't know why. Yeah, we don't need their oil. We have too much. That's pretty clear. We have 30 million barrels per day too much. It's like, why are we screwing with those guys? Let them don't mess with their oil. Leave it alone. Leave it in the ground. We don't need it. So, I know that we have our navy for some reason floating around over there. It doesn't. It's not 2003 anymore. There's too much oil. We have all the oil we'll ever need between Saudi Arabia and Russia and the United States. It's we don't need to go screw with the Venezuelans or anybody else for that matter at this point. They don't need to go to Iran and take their oil anymore. It's all that is out the window. So I don't know what kind of saber rattling bullshit that's going on. It doesn't make sense to me. The worst thing that could happen for oil right now is more comes on the market.
Right.
So this got started. This isn't that related. One of the things I've been wondering is how related to the pandemic this is, and it's because
So
it, yeah, God,
it's hard to say because there's some speculation that the Saudis saw this coming and they were trying to do something about it, and the Russians were kind of acting the same way that our administration did, and they say, hey, there's no big deal. It's a common cold. It's not going to be a big deal. We're not cutting shit because the Americans will take further more of our market share. And the Saudis tried to make a deal so they can get a cut ahead of the pandemic dropping demand. And when the Russians wouldn't come to the table, they said, screw it. So what the Saudis did in response was they not only increased their production to a historic high, but they also lowered their prices by a massive amount as well. So it was like a double flood. And the Russians obviously followed suit, and we ended up with every single square inch you could put any crude oil in the whole world is now full and filling up. So we went from 100 million barrels per day demand to about 70 million barrels per day demand in about 15 to 30 days. So that's how severe and how quickly everything. I mean, you guys know none of y'all are driving. Nobody's driving. Nobody's going anywhere. Nobody's buying a whole bunch of stuff. There aren't airplanes flying. The only thing that's continuing are ships and trucking. That's the only thing petro related that is continuing like nothing ever happened. Everything else has basically stopped. And I mean, literally stopped. You see the airlines reporting 90 to 95% reductions in flight year over year. from month to month, and it's hard to cut 30 million barrels per day. It's not possible. So you end up with what the WTI dropped into $17 a barrel, which means the change in your pocket. You can go buy a 50-gallon drum of oil right now if you wanted to. No
Holy
problem.
crap! Stop the show.
Yeah. Oil is about as much as it's about like a mediocre steak at a restaurant right now is what a whole barrel of oil would cost.
Dog, did you say $50? Holy crap!
And the implications of that are widespread. Not just what they're happening right now out here, but what it looks like on the other side is the whole game is who gets to produce the oil. And it won't be us as much anymore. It'll be the Saudis and Russians. When the demand starts coming back up, they want it to be their oil that serves that demand and not ours. And that was their end result. They tried this in 2015 and failed because money was so cheap in America that we could just float these companies for 18 months until they got the price back to something more reasonable. But it's an international game is what we play, and it's not us in charge. There's no such thing as energy independence, and there never will be.
Ooh. The part that was interesting, I don't want to talk about this too much longer, but the part
Sure,
that
go
was
ahead.
interesting to me was you mentioned by dropping the price of oil to like really, really low standards makes
Sure.
switching to an alternative less likely, right? Why switch to solar, wind, or energy
Right.
if oil is going to stay so cheap?
Yes, exactly. And I don't know if you saw Trump essentially drop the price of coal by several $billion as well with his
Did not.
regulation changes that he made through the EPA. He made the cost of a kilowatt of coal significantly drop because the regulation dropped significantly as well. So when you do these things, it's like, why are we going to buy an electric car when my brand new Honda costs $35,000 and it gets 35 miles per gallon? Why do I need to go buy a Tesla or some other car that costs $50,000 and goes 250, 350 miles when I can get a $35,000 car that gets great gas mileage? It makes it an incredibly competitive energy source, even when it comes down to alternative sources such as battery-powered vehicles, solar power, wind power.
John, shaking your head, got something?
It's too much oil.
Too much oil. 100% agree.
I never would have thought. It seems like a good problem. It seems like a good problem to have.
It is
but
for y'all. It's not for me.
Yeah, I understand that.
It's an interesting problem because
It also now it seems like they set us all up where we're all going to go back out, and then oh my god, oil's going to be like we're going to be tricked into using oil some more.
it's
Because it's going to
definitely
be
possible.
because we're going to be in this world where there's like so much. What happened to peak oil? I remember peak oil was going to be the
Peak
big.
oil. You know how oil ends? Oil
Yeah.
doesn't end when
Just
we
doesn't
run out
end.
of oil. Oil ends when oil stays at $20 a barrel. That's the end of oil. That'll be the end.
Interesting.
It won't be for a while now, but that's how it will actually end.
And it'll just be too expensive to sell if you're going
It'll
to
be too
sell
cheap
it.
to sell.
Well, too expensive to extract if you're only going to
Right.
sell it.
Yeah,
for
if you're only getting
$20.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And you only get $20 a barrel for it. That's how this whole show will end. Peak oil is long gone.
Yeah,
And
I feel like I fell for that like a chump like 10 years
peak
ago.
oil. You know when they
Yeah.
drilled the first well in the world in Pennsylvania, and they started talking about Pennsylvania in 1880, or peak oil was first brought up when the first well was drilled. So it's been around for 120 years or so, but the peak oil is never going to happen. Never, never, never.
I guess that's good.
Okay.
It's a great market. Exxon came up with peak oil to put it in perspective.
Oh,
Yeah,
god
it's
damn
those
it.
those types. Yeah.
Yeah.
We got a comment from a friend of ours, James Freeman, who says they need alternate uses for oil to prop the U.S. Maybe soothing oil baths?
Yes. Yes. Crude oil bath. I can't wait. It sounds
Yeah.
awesome.
Thank you,
Just
James
bring
Freeman.
keep those masks. You're gonna need them.
No doubt.
If it's only $50, I'll give it a try.
Yeah. Well, hey, might have some crazy health benefit. I don't know.
Okay.
Cancer, only 50 years from now.